Well, first of all, how is DC without me?
I
Has it
mean,
been heartbreaking without having an intern around?
look, we lost you, but we gained just a significant deployment of National Guard and federal troops. So, you lose one thing, you gain another. Our hearts were empty, but now they're full again with
Well,
gun-toting
I feel like
maniacs.
that's almost a compliment to be compared to the National Guard in terms of presence.
Yeah,
But
and the National Guard honestly aren't so bad. The ICE jump outs are a real problem. The National Guard just stand around. So, what are you gonna
I
do?
feel like when I was in DC, I don't remember that being as much of a headline story. The ICE presence. It was like the National Guard was on Instagram. It was on
Yeah,
Twitter. It was
there's
all
a
over
lot
the
more of them.
news.
Yeah, I
Now
mean the ICE guys kind of jump out of a van at you. The National Guard are like there for visibility, but they're all just like dudes from Ohio who are like, why am I here?
quick intro of who each of us are. I can start since mine is pretty simple. I'm just a college student. I born and raised in LA County from Long Beach, California. I go to UCLA right now. I'm a poli-sci major, minors in entrepreneurship and other things. But yeah, I've just basically been following politics since I was too young, I guess you
Yeah,
could say. Social media, and I think this is something that we'll probably talk about in the future, if not today, is social media's impact on how young people really get into politics.
yeah. What did it do to your brain to have that as a child? I can't even
Well, I
imagine.
mean, it was a combination of like Hillary Clinton hit pieces and
Yeah,
Minecraft videos that I was watching on my iPad. So
yeah.
I don't even know how that would
You're definitely the first generation that was seeing like current events content that was rotting your brain while playing video games that were like constructive and like really helping you like view the world and like learn how like things work. It's just like, oh yeah, Minecraft, that was great content, but also I was following politics, which really messed me up.
to a certain extent. I mean, like I I feel like it just really also depends on the person, type of person that you are. Like even as a little kid, I was really into history. Like
Yeah,
that was my in the past couple of days, I've just been in history podcasts and like old documents. That's been my free time the way I've been spending it. So not
yeah.
necessarily the most entertaining way that a 21-year-old can spend their time,
I
but
mean, does history make you feel better about anything you're experiencing right now, or does it make you feel worse? Not to derail us, but to 100% to derail us.
I think it makes me feel better. I think
Yeah,
because if you go beyond 1940, 19 even 1950, 1960, like you go through the decades of this last century of the 20th century and things just progressively get better. You go from World War II, which was terrible, and before that World War One, and then you get through the civil rights movement onto the other side where it's better and the economy is like a little
yeah,
bit better, and technology and computers and then the internet and social media. I feel like
yeah.
it's a weird thing where technology now is like turning on its head almost in a certain way. I have really negative and really love hate relationships with social media and video games to a certain extent, but
Yeah, well, I promised listeners that I will get to introducing myself in a moment, but I do just want to say we live in a moment where you are waking up every day and it feels like things are really bad, like things are really bad, but it feels like things are catastrophically bad in a way that they've never been before. And it is in a way, not that you should really necessarily want to feel better, but if you go and look at how bad things really were in 1941, where it looked like basically the free world was going to lose to a globe spanning authoritarianism, like that was like a legitimate possibility and probably the more likely possibility until December. And like, that was really bad. And look, things are really bad now, but things can't get so bad that you can't have hope to claw back from them.
yeah, I think people are not usually comparing it to 100 years ago or 200 years ago, or they're not comparing it to 1865 or 1941 or anything like that. And really, there were so many different ways that life could be much worse right now if that war
I don't
or
know. I
those
do compare it to
events.
1865 sometimes. Not the same. Obviously the state of the country and the state of the people in the country is far better than it was. But in terms of like political fracturing, like there's honestly a lot to be learned from the 1850s, the 1860s.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe this is a place where we can jump into your story. Do you
Yeah.
feel like this moment is if you can compare it to those time periods in history, in American history specifically, but if you're comparing it to 1990 or the middle of the Reagan era, obviously there were problems then, and they came with all sorts of complications and consequences in the way that those were handled. But I feel like if you're comparing 2025 to 1995, where the top issue of the day was Monica Lewinsky, I feel like you would probably take that over what you have now.
Well, here's where I get to be a history teacher. Monica Lewinsky wasn't until 1998.
Okay, well, close enough.
Not that I was paying attention at the time. Real quick, gonna introduce myself. I'm Pat Dennis. I'm a longtime political operative. I hired Dylan as an intern back in the day, but now we're just buddies. So I'm the old man. He's the young Padawan here who probably knows a lot more about the world these days than I do. Anyway, what do you want to talk about with the 80s and 90s? Like, how does that compare to today?
Yeah, so like you could make an argument that comparing 2025 to 1945, the world is so much better. Medicine, technology, computers, our ability to travel, all those things. So like quality of life is better. But if you're comparing it to maybe a point where the quality of life hasn't changed drastically since like 1990, 1980, is that comparison and analyzing 2025 as like a downturn from that point, is that a fair kind of perspective to have?
Yeah. So I'm both going to say that right now is uniquely bad, but every single contemporaneous account you read of anybody in any period in American history, they think they are in an unprecedented downturn in the standards, in the chaos, in the pace of life. Like every editorial for the last 200 years has said the pace of life has sped up too fast and nobody can handle it anymore, right? But if you go back to 1991, you want to talk about a feeling of uncertainty about the world, right? And 1991, I can talk about it so well because I was 3 years old at the time. But the Soviet Union just like fell apart, right? The entire geopolitical system was based upon a multipolar world where you had, the unaligned side, and then you had the United States and the USSR pointing nuclear weapons at each other, threatening to wipe out all life on the planet for like more than half a century. Like, it is difficult even for me because like I never really experienced it to understand what politics and geopolitics were like under that kind of threat, which there are geopolitical tensions with China, right? But it is nothing like that was right now. And the fact of the matter is 91, like the Soviet Union fell apart and nobody knew if they could keep their nukes under control, right? Like nobody knew if they could if these new republics would try to hold on to the nukes, threaten each other. It was like really scary. So you go back, honestly, the 90s, though, all else considered, in retrospect, pretty chill in a lot of ways. But not that chill. You had the Rwanda genocide. You had the Bosnian genocide. You had the United States refusing to intervene in one. You had the United States going and intervening in the other one, both having like terrible knock-on effects, showing that like there is no good choice we can make. This world is chaos. And then we had 9/11.
Which that was before I was born, by the
Oh
way,
my
just to
God.
put that into perspective.
Yeah.
Do you have a memory of 9/11? Do you have a 9/11 story? Were you
Yeah. I grew up in Jersey, pretty close to New York. I was in middle school. I was in the 8th grade. I was in my social studies class with my teacher, Miss Ada, and they came on the loudspeaker and they were like, if your parents work in the World Trade Center, you should come to the office. And nobody had ever made an announcement like that before. And I was like, and like some people went to the office, and so everybody was like really confused. And like we had TVs, but all the teachers like got a phone call and they were like, do not turn on the TVs. So of course, like between classes, we like turned on the TVs and we saw what was happening. And so I didn't have any family that worked in Lower Manhattan, but like I knew about a lot of people who did. And yeah, I mean, basically not that exciting, but I think I knew one person who died in it, but yeah.
I feel like maybe it's because I grew up on the West Coast and have lived in LA my entire life, and it's also because of my age. Like my older brother was 4 months old when 9/11 happened. So there's not like between me and my siblings and people my age,
Yeah.
there's no memory of it. And even the impacts, I will say, it depends on what you're talking about, whether or not you feel it as somebody who's my age and from my generation. The obviously the Iraq war, the war in Afghanistan, those things kind of loom in American consciousness, but also not as much for my generation where the concerns are in Ukraine and in Gaza,
Yeah.
which is a whole other podcast episode, 5 podcast episodes each, probably. But had you already been sort of involved in politics or like thinking about it, watching the news maybe, or picked up the newspaper at one point?
Yeah, I was not involved in politics. I was politically aware. I read the newspaper every day. My family was sort of proud that we didn't have cable television and we were like a reading family, which might explain a lot about me. But yeah, I read the newspaper every day back then. I was politically aware. I was already like pretty liberal, not like lefty liberal, but I knew that like I wasn't a Republican, right? So when 9/11 happened, like it's difficult to describe like the mood of the country at that point, but it's definitely like closer to COVID than it is like any other public event, in the sense that there is like nothing else going on for weeks. Like that is the only thing anybody talks about. It's the only thing everybody thinks about. It's the only thing that is on TV. It's the only thing that is in the paper. They're like canceling movies. Like everybody was basically like did not know how to process it at the time, and there was a lot of people who wanted like incredible revenge, right? And I felt this at the time, like, and I was a child. It was 13 or whatever, but like people wanted. It was like drop bombs on Afghanistan. I don't even know where Afghanistan is. Like people wanted to believe that the United States could essentially take back control. That we weren't like out of control in this world, that bad people did something and then we would find the bad people and kill them. Now, for a lot of people, that emotional state kind of went away after a couple months and became a little like more rational. But that fever like kind of stayed around in like a low boil for decades after that. And that's why people call it like the post 9/11 world. Like the world literally was different after that.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting hearing that because the only sort of comparison points, I guess, are COVID, which
Yeah.
is not really like an attack. It's kind of just something that happened circumstantial.
Yeah. But it did change everything.
Yeah. Um, I was there as much of a like sense of the fabric of the country's changed
Yeah.
because of in the same way that COVID happened and people I think some people have just moved on. It's like whatever, we need to get over it. But
Yeah.
also like the learning rates of children who went through COVID. Like I was in high school when COVID
Yeah.
happened. So like
Yeah. Do you
that
know
and
your
then
times
the
tables? Yeah.
huh?
Said, do you know your times tables?
Um, a little bit. Sometimes the mental math takes a second. I'm looking
Yeah.
up into the sky trying to figure it out. But yeah, learning rates and social media use, video game use,
Yeah.
a lot of like antisocial behavior kind of, and a lot of accelerants in that way.
Yeah.
What were the accelerants of society kind of after 9/11?
There,
You kind of
yeah.
described the anti Middle East sentiment, which is pretty obvious, but
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there is no doubt that COVID had a bigger impact on the normal individual person's life, right? The vast majority of America, there was zero impact of 9/11. Like flights were delayed for a couple of weeks. But they didn't materially like know anybody who died, but like pretty much everybody is like a few hops away from somebody who died of COVID. And like what you described with the schools there, it is an order of magnitude worse. But the big difference is it was also significantly slower. It's an event that took over years and you had time to get used to it, and nobody had time to get used to 9/11. So that was sort of the thing. I think there's a famous Onion headline from back then that was like, not, let's pull it up. It was like, not knowing what else to do, woman bakes cake that looks like the American flag, something like that. And like everybody was doing that. Like that headline sounds insane, like it doesn't make any sense, but like everybody was like putting up flags. It was like, I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I don't think anybody has. And yeah, so COVID, I think, has been a lot more destructive and a lot more insidious, right? Because it just sort of, it happened over so much longer.
And it's a background talking point, like the effects of it. It's not like we have
Yeah.
to reinvest in these schools, which kind of were delayed because of COVID, or re-education program. Re-education might not be the right word to use there, but work training programs. There you go, for people who went through COVID in middle school, high school, elementary school. Some of those people are still in school, I guess, but
I mean, that's a question I'm curious about. Like, you went through this. Do you feel like is learning loss something you feel? Do you feel like you were insulated from it? Do you feel like it had a social impact on you?
so March of 2020 was the middle of my sophomore year of high school. Um, I feel like everyone has a where they were for COVID moments similar
Yeah.
to 9/11. I was in my band class because I was a band kid. I play the
Yeah.
drums, and I, for the viewers, I have a drum kit behind me.
Nice.
But I was in band class, and everybody was like, "Oh, we're going on spring break for 2 weeks," and then obviously that didn't end up happening. It was a much longer spring break.
Oh man.
I feel like I was at a weird age where, like, I wasn't too young to be impacted learning wise, and I had like the right niche of hobbies that aligned perfectly
Yeah.
with COVID and being inside all day, which was politics and video games. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have to go outside to follow politics, and you don't have to go outside to play video games. So it was easy for me and my friends to kind of just connect in that way online.
And
It was an
were
accelerant of
video games
something that we
like
were
a
already doing.
social place that you were like?
Yes, yes.
That's
It
really
was
interesting to
my
me.
it was my only social place, actually,
Yeah.
for people that were not in my family. Um,
Yeah.
and conversely, instead of like being too young to be impacted like a middle school, elementary school kid is, they're in high school now or whatever grade they're in. The people older than me also had a really negative impact, because I think for my generation, there's this sense for some people, and it's not like a pro or con thing. It just is. As you get older, kind of video games are left in at home with the friends that you had in high school. And so somebody like my older brother, or people that I met at UCLA after I got there who were seniors when I was a freshman, they kind of described an experience of like something that they were owed, or something that they had just started experiencing was ripped away from them. That kind of socialization that you first get when you get to college, or you first graduated high school and you're kind of on your own, you're working or you're going to college or whatever you're doing, you can kind of have some more independence in that. And you're right at that age where you're like on a longer leash from mom and dad. You're
Yeah.
not necessarily completely broken free. So that leash got really tightened when
Yeah.
COVID came. And I think the social aspect was the biggest thing.
I think that would have made me mad, honestly. I think I would have been pissed off.
Why do you say that?
I mean, what you describe is like really frustrating. And like, if you don't have, like, there's nobody you can really blame, but I would just be mad about that. Like, I remember going to college. I loved it. Like, it was great. I was off the leash and like nobody was making me stay inside. So like, I could see how
Yeah,
that would have like an impact on how people think about stuff.
I think it really depends on like what type of person you are. For
Yeah.
me, I think COVID was, I back on it with sort of a nostalgia, and I know
Interesting.
like adults
That's
who
really
are
interesting.
listening to this are probably going to be like hand wringing me, like really mad at me for saying that. But
No, that's
it's
real. Yeah.
well, first for me, it was a sense of like these are my high school friends, and this is the thing that we're doing. We're playing Fortnite, and we're making Minecraft servers or whatever.
Yeah.
And that was the nerdy kid that I was, but people in Long Beach, where I grew up, were just around the corner from the beach, and you can go
Oh, nice.
surfing, and you can go drive to LA, or you can drive into Orange County, and like very nice places. You can do a lot. There's a lot of area to explore. If you did sports, I was not an athletic kid in high school at all.
Yeah.
A little bit more now, I hope, but for those people, it was like the world was just ended. Same as adults and people who didn't grow up with social media, but social media became social, I guess, in a way that it wasn't before for me. And then it's kind of flipped on its head again.
Yeah. Well, social media, I mean, if you look back on it nostalgically, that implies social media was like felt pretty positive at the time. Does it still feel that way now? Does it feel like a good place?
Well, for me, no, and I think there's a
Yeah.
good amount of people in my generation who would say so as well. When I will go out and meet people in like in class or wherever in college, and I like pull out my phone and they're like, "Oh, let me follow you on Instagram." I don't have Instagram downloaded on my phone. I have it deleted
Yeah.
on my phone. And they look at me sideways like, "What is wrong with you? Are you sure you're like mentally okay if you don't have Instagram on your phone to connect with people?"
Yeah.
I think it's a crutch, I think is the way I would describe it, is your people that you want to interact with that are not like in your direct circle and
Yeah.
people that you maybe you're not calling or texting. It's a great way to connect with them. It's also like the easiest source of entertainment ever. And
Yeah.
if you're in between classes and you have 20 minutes, like that sense of, oh, I could just go on my phone, but then it kind of spirals out of control.
Oh yeah.
Common for people of all ages and
Yeah.
generations,
That's
but
not just a Zoomer thing. That is real for everybody.
yeah.
But
But growing up with it is like you're almost trained to
yeah.
rely on it. I have a distinct memory in middle school of a girl in my band class, like on Instagram. She was sitting in front of me, and it was like eighth grade, and she's like swiping through like Instagram like so fast. And I'm like, how are you even like seeing what you're looking at? Like you're just going through it like it's a
Dopamine
toy or
firing.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, dopamine receptors are completely gone. Um, but yeah,
Well,
social
you
media
just
is
mentioned something I want to jump back to, which is like people you're not calling. Do Zoomers call each other on the phone? I am very curious about this.
I don't. I suck at
Yeah.
it because my friends will call me and I'll see my phone ringing and I'm like, "Ugh, I don't really want to pick up my
You're a
phone right
millennial
now."
at heart. This is a thing that like when I was growing up, like middle school, high school, we had AOL Instant Messenger, which was like you had to plug your computer into the internet and like go on for like 2 hours a day and you could like, essentially text each other. Later we had MySpace, which was like crazy. Or we just called each other and then you would like three-way call and like add people on. But like really like phones were the social network. And then like millennials by like 2013 just like turned against the phone. Like none of my friends will ever use the phone. They will never call me, like unless like somebody is dead, right? Or like they pocket dial me. Like the phone has like fallen off with millennials, and I think it's a real problem.
I think it's again like it sort of evolved into this thing for Gen Z where it's a little different. It's not like oh, I don't want to use the phone because it's like I don't know if this is the perspective, but it's like, oh, something my parents would do. Like I don't want to
Yeah,
be on the
yeah,
phone with someone all day. But for Gen Z, people just text each other so much that if you really want to like talk to someone or get a message through or something, then you have to call them.
yeah.
And I have friends who will just call me all the time because they're like, I just want to talk. I don't want to have to sit here and text and type this all out. Like it's
That
too
gives
much
me
of a
hope. That's a
hassle.
good sign. Yeah,
Yeah, well, it's like you're texting and so like deep in the hole of social media and like just
yeah,
little text notes on your phone that you have to like actually call someone and get some hear a voice of another human being.
yeah.
Was I for so I had social media for like my intro into politics. That's like a story that we'll get to. It's like in a couple minutes probably. Where was the starting point for social media and politics? Like
For me,
for people in general, but also for you.
yeah. I mean, it was very different. Like politics was blogs for a long time, and I kind of missed the like the height of the early blogosphere, but like politics was blogs, and it was CNN, right, and Fox News and MSNBC.
They had blogs.
Well, yeah, everybody had blogs at a certain point.
I thought blogs were like just like some guy in his basement kind of typing away.
They were, and they still are, but they, all these like traditional publications then started like they had their traditional newsrooms, and they would start quote unquote a blog, and sometimes that meant like lower editorial standards. They would publish 30 times a day per byline. Like each person would be putting like dozens and dozens of posts up, almost like you would tweet now. Um, but that was like on the traditional web, right? You would like have a bunch of links that you would go to, a bunch of bookmarks, or you would, have an RSS feed. RIP. We love those. And then Twitter came around, and I got on Twitter in '08 or '09. It started in '06, but it wasn't really political yet. And I remember getting on Twitter whenever it was, 08 or 09, and feeling like, oh, this is over. Like, this is an old social media network. It's been around since 2006. Like, I'm just catching the tail end of the golden years of Twitter. But that's when things really became like real time. And like, you, as just like nobody, had like direct texting contact with basically all the political reporters that you were reading on blogs. And it's like, oh, like I'm in a room with these people. So old Twitter was great, honestly.
Was a lot of people say Obama's first run was the start of really social media and politics really
And
coming
Facebook.
together in that
Yeah.
specific way. Was there before that, was there any sense of like social media as a political thing, or was it just, oh, this is new and people just happen to be talking about politics?
Yeah, I mean, Facebook was real for Barack Obama, but like I can tell you, I was a college kid when that was going on. I mean, it wasn't a swing state, but like everything on Facebook was just like talking to girls. Like there was nothing political on it at all. Although, apparently that stuff was happening, but like I was politically plugged in and I didn't get any of that Barack Obama stuff on Facebook. Allegedly it happened. And, it was email lists, right? It was, back when email fundraising was like this awesome new thing that we thought was going to save politics. It didn't. But yeah, weird times with Barack Obama himself was very much like a much more of a celebrity coming onto the scene than anything else. So really anywhere you turned there was Barack Obama stuff going on.
So what was the medium of politics then? Because right now it feels like it's social media. Like you
Yeah.
go on YouTube and you're looking up Ben Shapiro for your news. You're not
Yeah.
turning on Fox. Some people are, I guess. But what was the medium? Like what was the sense of like, if I want to go talk about politics, where do I
Yeah.
go?
If you're a nerd who wants to go talk about politics, it was blogs, 100%. Like you would go on the blogs, and people forget this, but like the comment sections of blogs, news articles didn't used to have comment sections, but the comment sections of blogs were like a social network, and people would have relationships and know each other from the comment sections on different blogs, and had their favorite authors that they would constantly read. And yeah, it was like Politicker NJ, and God, there's so many. It's where Matt Iglesias and Ezra Klein really cut their teeth, and there are a billion other blogs, many of whom I forget, many of whom are still around. Talking Points Memo was a blog back then. So yeah,
So for the nerds, it was blogs, and for
yeah,
everybody else, it was TV. And so
newspapers, print
newspapers.
newspapers. Yeah, I mean, you would read them online then, but they were still print newspapers generally.
And was that like something that people read?
Oh yeah,
Because I
oh yeah,
now newspapers in my mind are just dead. Like they don't really exist anymore. They do, obviously.
yeah.
I still get newspaper on my front porch every once in a while. But
No way.
yeah,
Like you
well,
without paying for it.
it's the Runyon Gazette. It's the Long Beach newspaper. So
Yeah.
so that kind of leads me to think that, and I feel like this is, you can put two and two together and figure this out, but it leads to a sense of politics being less ingratiated into society compared to
Yeah.
the way that it is today.
Yeah.
Is how much of a negative, because I feel like it's only negative, how much of a negative impact has that sort of like shift to politics being in everything? How negative has that been? How much better did politics feel in '08 versus today,
It's so
if at all?
funny. People, so like I was really like becoming politically aware in the George W. Bush administration, the '04 election. I was in high school, the '06 midterms. I was graduating high school. And for people, liberals who were like hated Bush, like the biggest thing that drove us crazy was all these people who just like weren't paying attention. They didn't follow politics. They didn't know. They just wanted to vote for some guy that they wanted to have a beer with, and like they didn't pay enough attention to politics. And we all just sort of like wished on a monkey's paw that people would pay more attention to politics. And now everything is politics, and it sucks. Like people pay way too much attention to politics. I am a political operative who spent, more than 15 years of my life learning the craft of professional politics. And my dad will frequently read polls before I do. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, don't do that. Like, unless you're making a decision about where to place an ad buy, like that is probably like here's what I think breaks politics, right? Everybody is talking about politics and what other people will think and how other people will react to people's political moves, right? But politics is you thinking and reacting to other moves, right? And if you're so focused on this like operative meta game of like strategy, then you forget to have opinions. You forget to like be the public opinion yourself. And it's, you know, people call it political hobbyism, but it's a real problem.
Yeah. Have you read the book Politics is for Power or something like that?
Uh,
Or heard
yeah,
of the book?
yeah.
The author, I forget his name because I read it a while ago, but he basically talks about political hobbyism as part of the death of people having power in politics. Is if you're spending all this energy like screaming at your screen or excreting excrements on Twitter, excrements on X. If you're doing that, you're kind of just spending your energy in a wasteful way. Um,
Yeah.
and I mean, we're sitting on a podcast that we'll see how far this goes. I don't know how much better that is. Just shouting into the internet universe.
So my hot take on this podcast is that podcasts are like way better than any other medium. Nothing like this existed back when I was getting into politics. And like we are like human beings are designed to like engage with politics through our voices, right? I'm like thinking about becoming an anti-writing activist. Like you, like yes, I love reading. I will read stuff all day. I'll read tweets, I'll read blogs, whatever. But if you really want to communicate in a way that like we evolved to communicate, it's with the voice. And like that may sound like hippy dippy whatever, like who cares? But no, it's like people like you will get in a written medium, right? Twitter, Instagram comments, you know, your mom's Facebook feed, right? And people will get so mad and like think the other person is like Hitler, right? Over what is essentially a minor disagreement and usually like just like people misreading each other, right? And like when you're talking via a voice, like we have like millions of years of evolution that stop that from happening, and like you find middle ground, and it's like and that carries through over podcasts. So as somebody speaking on a podcast, put me down as pro podcast. And
Well,
look,
I
maybe
mean,
we
we're
will
on a
lose the
podcast.
written word soon, so you know
We're on a
it's not
podcast,
trending
so
well. Yeah,
that's the best place to have a pro podcast view. The pro
indeed.
podcast, I
Yeah,
guess.
it better be good. Yeah.
Is there an argument, and so this is something that I'm not a very like disagreeable person by nature, and it's
Yeah,
interesting that I like am very interested in politics because it's all disagreeable people talking about disagreeable things. But
doesn't have to be. Yeah.
I feel like talking in person about politics really gets you to agree maybe a little too much. Is that a sense that you like sometimes
Oh,
that's where I like people are like we need to agree more, like we need to understand each other more. There needs to be less division. And I agree. I agree that we need to have less division, but also I don't want to be agreeing with a lot of things with the MAGA Republican Party.
yeah, for sure. And definitely there are people who are just like so sycophant, like they can't handle conflict that they will like kind of just like nod to go along to get along in a conversation. And that's like a real risk. But like as long as you have like strong beliefs and like an affect that can like healthily disagree with somebody, you know, I used to, when the Tea Party was getting started, I don't even know if you know about the Tea Party, but like it was the
I
hot
know
new
of the Tea
thing.
Party.
Yeah, I know. It was the hot new thing. And so they were protesting all over the place. They were, you know, I was working for a member of Congress and they were coming to town halls and yelling at people. They were having their own rallies and events and candidate forums. And I used to go to those, usually as a tracker to like record our Republican opponents. And I would like hang out afterwards and get beer with those people who were like mostly new to politics, super conservative, all MAGA supporters now. And we would, but they were like new to politics, so they wanted somebody to argue with because all their friends agreed with them. And like we would just like go at it. And like it was interesting. But the fact of the matter is, like, we do agree on a lot of stuff. Like the stuff we agree on kind of, we just don't feel like the need to talk about it. But it's like, yeah, people should have like good jobs and like not die in the streets of not having healthcare. And it's like, you know, everything else kind of gets lost in the details.
I don't know if all those points are agreed upon, though. At least
Yeah.
maybe in what people say, but not in principle. And I feel like this is
Yeah.
the liberal uh, angry points on Twitter is like Republicans are not hearing us, they're not understanding.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where the agreement frustrates me the most. Is like people will say we're basically the same, or like we agree on all these things, but in practice, I don't think the Republican Party, at least the people who are in power, maybe like voters are different from the people in power in this circumstance, but the Speaker of the House will be saying we need to make sure that people have good healthcare outcomes. We don't want to take away social safety net programs, but then they're
Yeah.
doing exactly what they're saying they
Oh,
don't want to do.
yeah.
And I feel like that's where the conversation gets just like completely unfactual and not based in reality.
Yeah. There was a time when Republicans worked really hard to explicitly say that they wanted to cut like Medicare and Social Security, and they lost. And this is kind of where Trump changed a lot of stuff. But yeah, no, there's definitely politicians are liars. Like you heard it here first. Like they're politicians are liars. You know, depending on the circumstances, Democratic politicians can be liars. It is in a lot of ways the nature of the business. And I do not want to give the impression here that I think Republicans are good. Put me down as Republicans are quite bad, and elected Republicans really bad. Mike Johnson really, really, really bad.
So pro podcast and anti Republican.
Indeed.
I think that kind of explains the title of the podcast, at least what
Yeah.
I came up with. So we'll see if we stick with it. Um, okay, circling way back.
Yeah.
Um,
Doing the
what?
weave.
Yeah. What was the point in which you decided I'm going to go from somebody who follows politics in the news and like hating George Bush
Yeah.
to actually getting in the arena?
Yeah. So it wasn't entirely clear to me that that would be possible. Didn't, uh, I knew I was in college. I studied philosophy. I knew like I liked some classes. I didn't like other classes, but I loved being in college socially. I didn't love being in college where like my life energy was going to writing papers that like a grad student would read and sort of skim and like uh work that wasn't like super valuable. Um
That's
so like
my one more year of that, and then I'm
I
done.
know. So I started looking for a way out. And like, I was in college. I had a buddy who was working for what turned out to be like the largest, most powerful Democratic media consultant in the state. So I was like, hey, can you get me an internship over there? And he was like, yeah. And then, I sort of did. And like, I wasn't doing Oppo. I came in my first day and they gave me a printed book that had I should have given you this test when you were an intern. It had every radio station in New Jersey, of which there were like hundreds, and the phone number of their office and the phone numbers of all the producers. Incredible book. They don't make them like that anymore. And they were like, start at the A's and call every single one of them. And you're going to ask if we have a client who I will not name. All right, well, it was Bob Menendez. We have a client who recorded a PSA, and we want it to be put on the radio for free. It's like about how seniors should, I don't know, get Social Security or whatever. And I want you to call every single person and ask them to put it on the air for free. So I did. And that was like my first political task. Not very glamorous, not very fun. But then I started like meeting all the members of Congress, and they would come in and like started to get a sense for like, I could be in this game. Like I thought I'd become like a New Jersey operative. So I went and worked for, I got an internship with the governor's campaign, swindled them into I was like, look, I don't want to go back to college. What is like I don't need a lot of money, but I need something so that I can tell my parents that I'm dropping out of college to take a job and not dropping out of college to take an internship. And they were like, all right, $1,500 a month. And I'm like, fine, deal. So I did that. Worked as a tracker and did Oppo, and then once I did that, I had a few skills, so I could sort of hit the road.
What is Oppo for people who don't know what that is?
Opposition research, digging up dirt, which back then was like driving around and going to police stations and like asking them to search their files for your opponent.
This sounds pretty fun. It's
Yeah,
like,
for
hey,
sure.
can
Yeah,
you tell me all the bad things about this person?
yeah, for sure.
Like, kind of outsources the work a little bit.
Yeah, I would like go into the police station and be like, "Hey, did Chris Christie go the wrong way down a one-way street and run over a motorcyclist?" And then when the cops came, tell them that he was a U.S. attorney, so they shouldn't arrest him, and then not get arrested. And they were like, "Yes, here's all the files." Um, so it was kind of like that.
Was there at when you started going into this, was it like a sense of this is something I'm kind of just interested in and it
Yeah,
happens to be impactful, or was there a thought process of like I want to actually do something that will make some sort of difference? Because I do feel like
yeah,
I hear with a lot of people at UCLA, it's very aspirational, very much like I want to make a difference. I don't care
yeah,
about the money. Like get me on the front lines, give me a put a picket in my hand, and I'll go
yeah,
protest and whatever forever.
yeah. And yes, I am in politics, like, and always have been for like one thing, and like there's types of activism, right? Where you can have a very specific vision for the world and try to make that vision happen, right? You can just like, I hate fossil fuels and I'm going to like try to make fossil fuels like not exist in this country or like whatever. And like, I've never been that. I've always been like, George W. Bush was a disaster. Barack Obama had problems, so it was significantly better. And it is a blunt object, but just like winning elections for Democrats for me was like the aspiration. Like, we just need to win elections and keep power away from these Republicans. And then also, like, not let the Democrats screw it up too badly, but primarily keep the Democrats in office. And like, that has always been my goal, which is like, not like it turns a lot of people off, right? Because you're not asking for something specific. There is a lot of specific stuff I really care about, which is generally the stuff that makes me a Democrat. But by sort of putting myself in this position where I'm not fighting for just one specific thing, I'm fighting for a large directional movement, it sort of lets you have um, a lot more impact because like, if you're just trying to like shut down one coal plant or whatever, like either it shuts down, in which case great, you did it, or but then maybe it reopens or whatever, as opposed to like this longer sort of like never ending fight that kind of needs to be fought.
Is there? Do you feel like there's any pull of just being anti-Republican and that's it? Like,
No.
obviously, especially in the moment that we're in right now, it's just like, oh, all the Democratic Party it can define itself as is anti-Republican. Is there
Yeah,
ever like a concern for you? It's just like, oh, I'm just getting caught up in this hatred of red.
for sure. It's funny, like how much I hated Mitt Romney when, like, in 2012, and like now in retrospect, like kind of a funny, interesting dude. Like, but that's sort of something you need to, as an operative, put yourself into. But yeah, it would be like probably really psychically damaging to just become anti-Republican, and you see this on both sides of the aisle. People who sort of lose the plot. Now, I like to imagine I still have the good of the world at heart. And basically, like, it's
Hopefully,
pretty easy to explain why having somebody besides Joni Ernst voting for cabinet nominees would be really good for the world. You know, our HHS secretary helps that. So
well, yeah, I'm. You're not going to get disagreement from me. Maybe we'll have to talk to someone who will actually disagree with what we're saying.
yeah.
But what was like, and this is maybe pertinent to the moment that we're in right now. I feel like right now, Democrats, as two people who you more than me at this point, but as
Mm,
two people who are at least involved in Democratic politics, there's no like aspirational vision. I feel like you have like the abundance Democrats, and they'll
yeah,
say like, "Oh, we need more technology, sort of evolution and revolution and things like that, and we need to improve our well-being through this technocratic future."
yeah,
But I also feel like for the broader party, it's just kind of like still a malaise. Like
Yeah.
this kind of in the same sense, there was a fever after 9/11 of people just like in this sluggish state of like, we're tied up
Yeah.
with this. I feel like it's the same issue with Democrats, and they keep saying, oh, we'll figure it out. Oh, we'll figure it out.
Yep.
Has How far back does that reach? Because I feel like since 2020 at least,
Yeah.
maybe 20, definitely 20, since 2016 actually. It's the
Yeah.
lesser of two evils is where I first started hearing that. How far back does that go? And was there an aspirational vision when you first got into politics?
Yeah, I mean there was. It was named Barack Obama, right? Hope and change. And like that sounds like a cliche at the time. This comes back to like one of my beliefs. I was just writing about this honestly, which is people want the Democratic Party as an institution to have a positive vision. In my mind, like a faceless institution cannot do that. An institution is made up of people, and only the people inside of it can do that. And, you know, there are great Democrats, there are less great Democrats. I'm not going to name names, but basically, in my mind, like we do need that positive vision. And the only way to do it is for somebody to rise up the ranks into a leadership position, not just like a formal leadership position, but a moral leadership position in the party. And they can only basically do that by earning it in the media, through their actions, if they hold office, through their actions, you know, through speeches, through communication, through you know, probably an electoral campaign. And that is like it has to be a person. It has to be a leader. I am not a believer in like leaderless movements. We're human beings. We need to put our hopes and dreams in a person who we want to deliver on that. And in reality, delivering on it becomes the job of like thousands of people in Washington, D.C. and across the country. But like, yeah, we need a leader real bad. And we do not really have one right now. But I am hopeful that we will get one.
I feel like that also explains the obsession with presidents in American history.
Yep.
Like it's the JFK era or the Reagan era or the Obama era. I feel like people identify specific politics, a specific rhythm to the way that the landscape of government and the society and the cultural issues flow through one person. The Trump era is
Yeah.
especially as big of an example, as great of an example that you can use is MAGA is not a movement without Trump. There is
Yep.
no such thing as MAGA. It never exists without Trump. Maybe some other politician
The
like
forces would
within
be there, but they would be channeled in a different way by a different person.
right.
Yeah.
And in the way that it has been used and utilized in the way that MAGA has evolved, maybe at the beginning in 2015 when Trump first came down the escalator was maybe when it was in its most pure raw form. And but now it's Trump's coalition. I think you can make a good argument for that being the case. Do you feel like there's any exceptions that you can think of, at least in American history, where there was a movement and there was no face to it and it became sort of popular? Because I can't think
No,
of one.
I mean the progressive movement, but they had, you know, they had Teddy Roosevelt, they had you know, the Trust Busters. There's, you know, any movement that is doesn't have a face will eventually be co-opted by like a politician who will essentially run to the front of the parade, right? So that is a big part of how people see where the winds are going, and they say, oh, I can lead these people, let me run to the front. So yeah, it's tough to imagine. There is, in progressivism, there is, as of late, a desire for like leaderless movements, right? You never really saw, like for Black Lives Matter, for example, like a single charismatic, you know, a Martin Luther King rise to the top of that. And, you know, a lot of the people who were doing the really important work on that sort of talked about it as a deliberate strategy. And they saw, you know, definitely accurately, that if they had a, you know, a single leader, that person would be like singled out by the other side and attacked and dragged down, which is definitely true. In my mind though, like you don't get to, like, it doesn't help you. It's just as bad as we've seen with Black Lives Matter. Republicans are happy to tear down your movement whether or not it has a face, but people really do, you know, it's a lot easier to latch onto something that does have a leader out front. I think that's one of the real benefits of this civil rights movement.
But maybe it's also like in order to get that over that last hump of like now we're in the majority or now we're in a position where we can make some sort of big impact. Like before MLK, the civil rights movement existed. It's just he sort of took it over that hump of we need to convince the broader society and the politicians who are in power now
Yeah.
that this movement is worthwhile. Same thing with MAGA. Like we have this xenophobic, anti-immigrant sort of sense. The Tea Party was something like a first stab at it, and it didn't work. And then you have Trump who takes it over the hump.
Yeah.
Also, maybe.
And it's really interesting, and I think a big part of Mitt Romney's loss, although obviously the Tea Partiers all voted for him, but he really wasn't able to channel those forces that were in the Tea Party. Mitt Romney was kind of the last gasp of like a much different Republican Party that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, well, he wasn't cut from that cloth of the Tea Party. He wasn't part of this movement that wanted to. And now I'm going to stumble because I can't even really articulate what the Tea Party wanted.
Yeah.
He wasn't, as far as I can tell, he wasn't part of that sort of movement that wanted whatever its goals were. At
The
some
Tea
point,
Party
I'll look
said
it up after this.
Tea Party said they didn't want Obamacare, which was true. They also said they wanted low taxes, which was true, but kind of in the background. Only a few people really realized this. In the background was always immigration as like the driving issue. And it was always kind of like hidden a little bit. And they would talk about taxes. They would talk about healthcare, especially because Obamacare was happening at the time. But yeah, it was immigration. When I talked to those guys at like town halls and stuff, they were always talking about immigration first. And, that was Trump's insight.
Why the focus on the ACA then?
Because it was being passed.
That's why it's like, it wasn't because of a bigger social safety net. Like we don't want to have nanny state. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, they just hated the idea that a candidate that they didn't like was like reforming the entire healthcare system and like making like real changes to the way they had to live their lives, which like, I get it. The ACA was absolutely worth it, but was, it's real hard to pass legislation in this country.
Yeah. Do you feel like after I feel like the ACA sort of on that point though took the wind out of left-leaning politics sails since it passed. I feel like there hasn't been, and maybe it's just because Obama is term limited and is gone from politics in the same way that he was when he was president or when he was a candidate. But I feel like also there's a exact point in for the last 16 years, you can say the ACA was a point in where left-leaning politics has not had a sort of aspirational vision in the same way that like Republicans don't necessarily want to solve like the abortion issue. They're kind of just like, let it go to the states, because if you solve abortion in the way that they want to quote unquote solve it, you rid your coalition of a rallying point. I feel like healthcare was that thing. Medicare for all is too extreme, and then no one on the Democratic Party really wants to get rid of it, the ACA. So we're kind of just in this limbo of like, since then we've had no North Star to go to.
Yeah, it is interesting. Healthcare is at the core of why a lot of people are Democrats, including me. And you're definitely right. On the other hand, like, you gotta, like, it would be so bad to have like a really motivated and like, aligned Democratic Party in 2025 around the issue of like finally tackling pre-existing conditions, right? Because like in the meantime, you're just running people into a meat grinder of not being able to get care. So it's like, yeah, I mean, what you describe absolutely has happened. And the Medicare for all thing for me is like, as a policy wonk, leaving aside my operative stuff, is kind of a debacle, because like it's a really easy to describe thing. It would be a massive change to the way our system works. I think the way our system works, like, it would be really good to implement Medicare for all, but like it might actually be better to implement something that's a little more, a little bit more of a federalist system, the way our states are divided up. But you can't even have this discussion. Like, it's not even like, nobody is rallying around the idea of like maybe doing a large Medicaid expansion that results in universal care across 50 state programs. Like, it just doesn't work.
If you were going to think about like what would get the most clicks on YouTube, like debate of federalist system versus Medicare for all versus like Trump calls staffer like the N-word or something. Like
Yeah.
obviously one of those things is going to get
Yeah.
a lot more clicks. And maybe that is like I don't even know how you build a coalition in 2025 without it being sensationalized issues that don't matter on the same level as like these widespread issues. I guess immigration might be one thing where it is this widespread
Yeah.
quote unquote issue.
There were a lot of attempts to make climate into the rallying issue, but it's a difficult issue to force
Yeah,
into that place.
pie in the sky sort of thing.
Yeah.
One thing maybe we can end on this
Yeah.
since we're getting close to an hour is so a lot of people in politics have been analyzing and on the left have been analyzing 2024, trying to pick it apart and trying to dissect it, find the place where they think they can learn a lesson to plug into 2028. And in those comparisons, people have made a comparison to the '04 election after Democrats lost after John Kerry was pretty handily defeated. I feel like one question that I have, and maybe one point of going into 2028, Democrats have to figure this out, is the Democratic Party, as somebody my age, has always felt divided. It's never felt unified,
Yeah.
including Biden. So many people in 2020 were like, I'm not voting for him. People on the left were like, he's an absolute sham. He worked with
Strom Thurmond.
segregationist politicians, the busing programs, and he's old and he's not left leaning, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Was that the case in '04? Question, because I don't know as much. And second question, which is completely not related to '04, is it possible to get to that sort of coalescing leader, that North Star point, that vision that you have leading you into the next political era with how divided Democrats have been?
Yeah. So I am sure there were dirtbag leftists in '04 who hated John Kerry, and you always had your sort of, your Green Party voters or whatever. But no, it was not like that for John Kerry. John Kerry was, definitely some people thought he was too moderate, but by and large, that was not the issue. It is really important that like at the nominating convention for John Kerry is in '04 is like when Barack Obama made his keynote speech that then made everybody, including me, learn who Barack Obama was and like literally then start to rally around him. That hasn't happened yet, for us. Like we don't have that person who's like really taken it and run with it. And you have some folks who are in their own way working on that. Somebody, Gavin Newsom's over in your neck of the woods, many others. But ultimately, I do think it is a solvable problem. Somebody can come in and appeal to both sides. JB Pritzker, another possible example. I think somebody who is authentic enough, is not like lying to people, it does not come off as full of shit, can earn the trust of the further left side of things without like without destroying their own electability. That is the goal. And you've seen Mamdani in New York is like a great example of this, like the left giving people a longer leash to moderate. They want to win elections too. So those are all really hopeful signs to me. I do think it is a solvable equation.
Is someone like AOC too far left in your calculus?
It's hard to say. She's super talented. She's not particularly popular nationally the way that like a Barack Obama was at this point in his cycle, but she is so incredibly talented that like you can see a world where she just wins people over, where like, a lot of the people who don't like her are only familiar with like, their uncle's Facebook posts about her and not
Right.
like actually having seen her speak. But that said, I don't know. It's the kind of thing where like, I really like elections. I like primaries. I think, a really like a rip roaring primary with like where we put everybody up against each other and see how they do would be really great, unless it turns into 2020, just like, just run to the left with nonsense policy positions that are like not even wonkish. They're just like made to like put you 6 inches to the left of the other 20 people on the stage with you.
That's so fun though. It's so fun to watch. That's
my
my
God.
that was my like starting
Oh
point
my
into
God.
politics of really like following it was the 2020 Democratic primary. It was so fun. Everybody
Yeah.
talking over each other. You have no idea what's going on.
Yeah.
It's a bloodbath. It's
People
perfect.
just like declaring everlasting hatred for each other because one person's healthcare proposal is like Medicare for all and the other one is Medicare for all who decide to sign up for the Medicare for all program. And it's like, it's literally just like a clause about whether private insurance like will continue to exist like it does in Germany or whether it'll be like the NHS or whatever. And it's like not gonna get through the Senate, guys. Like, why are you like, yeah. Anyway, we got to avoid
And,
that.
and at this point, I don't know if it would get through to the voting population. Like, can Americans, even like 5 years on from 2020 or 6 years from the primary debates in 2019, like, can people's attention span and no like knowledge of politics really help them to understand what is being discussed? I don't even feel like that was the case in 2019. But now I don't I feel like it's maybe this
Yeah.
is maybe not the best note to leave the podcast on.
Look,
Like
the
people are stupid
skill
and don't know how politics
the
work.
skill of a politician. You've never had a world where like everyday voters were policy experts with master's degrees, right? The skill of a politician, and FDR is like the ultimate example of this of all time, is like your job is to explain it to people. And like with our current social media world, your job is to explain it to people. And like
Right.
much like FDR had radio, we now again have the capacity for direct communications.
So
We need
maybe it's a
we need an
hopeful thing.
FDR. Yeah,
Maybe
it's hopeful.
it's like now that politicians have the ability to speak to people literally in their pockets,
Yeah,
in their brains soon with Neuralink. Like
exactly.
be hearing Biden's voice like in the back of your head, literally.
Yeah. I'm just going to be buying like Google ad credits to like drop Oppo directly into your frontal cortex. It's going to be awesome.
Andy Ogle's projected right in front of your eyeballs. That'd be
Exactly.
kind of scary. I don't know if I would want that, but
Yeah.
all
Change your
right.
vote.
Well, I think this was a good starting point. Thank you
No
for
doubt.
watching, and we'll see how this
Yeah.
sort of coalesces in the future. We'll put this on YouTube and Spotify and Instagram and all the places and figure out how to deliver the medium since we've talked about social media so much.
Yeah.
But
Cool, man. Yeah, that
thank
was
you,
great
Pat.
stuff.
Yeah,
Cool.
this is fun.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Oh wait, okay.
I'll
So
let it upload.
yes, let me stop